Hi, you're watching TechCrunch TV. I'm Colleen Taylor, sitting here with Reid Hoffman, who you just came off stage, had a great keynote with, a fireside chat.
Yes.
Without a fire, with Mike Arrington. How do you think it went?
It's always fun to talk to Mike. He's always trying to get you to say something outrageous on stage, and you're always worried that you came off stage saying something outrageous that perhaps you shouldn't have. But it was great.
He has an uncanny ability to be able to do that. But I don't think you didn't say anything too crazy. You did say the partial bullshit about Twitter's ecosystem, but that was about it. I wanted to ask you because you recently wrote a book, The Startup of You. And so you're giving advice. You give advice every day to people, and now you've gotten from a bigger platform. I want to ask, is there any kind of piece of advice or an axiom that you hear repeated often in startup land or in tech that you think is misguided and that you wish everyone would just stop saying it?
Well, maybe, let's see. I'll start with some things they should say that they don't, which is, the real focus is only on success and the team that you build around you. So people tend to obsess about things like valuation. They tend to obsess about, press and other kinds of things where it's like, for example, when you're doing financing, it's actually about success. It's about how do you build the strongest possible team around you? And that's really the most central question. Like, people obsess about, like, for example, partially because it's easy to talk about, use it as a score, as a metric, press does it, entrepreneurs do it, like valuation X versus valuation Y. That doesn't matter until 5 years out when you've really, really built a company. So how do you build the kind of company around you is something I wish people talked about more and focused more on what they're doing. They think about the talent that you hire into a company, but they don't think about the entire network that you build around a company as a function of that. And then I'd say, in terms of advice, frequently what happens, it depends a little bit on the specifics. So like in the consumer, people frequently try to talk about business model too early, right? So the question comes down to when you're a seed stage company, they're going to say, well, what's your business model? And the answer is, a seed stage consumer company, you hopefully have some puzzle pieces and you're thinking about what the business model might be. But if you say it with confidence, you're wrong. Right, because most often those change, and they change because what you pivot the company itself, how you get the company to scale, what kinds of things you do, change which kinds of business models. Now, even in a large company, Facebook's an example of this. Everyone's going, well, where's the business model on mobile? I don't see the business model on mobile yet. And you're like, well, just like anything else, it has to be iterated to. Now, you may have a discount percent on what's the likelihood of the innovation getting to the kind of numbers that we want and what kind of time frame. But the fact that there will be innovation and people will try things that are interesting, as long as you have a sharp team, good technologists, good thinkers behind it, is kind of not that startling of a statement. Anyway, so those types of things.
But public market investors, you mentioned Facebook, they want to know quarter, like every 3 months, it's got to be something. Why do you think LinkedIn is often held up as, the great tech IPO of recent years? Why do you think LinkedIn has been a successful IPO?
Well, I think we benefited from the fact that we never had a period in our lives where we were described as the total world killers. So no one ever had this expectation of us that it was like the whole world's going to change when we IPO, a year after we IPO. And so it's been easier for us to beat people's expectations for us, because they kind of went, okay, you got a good business, we see what the growth is, and that's the framework in which we talk about the company in. And Jeff and the team have been doing a great job. We've continued to when people have had expectations, we've at least met them, sometimes exceeded them as a function. And I think the public markets like that kind of predictability. They like that reliability. They like the understanding of, okay, I get it. I can understand where this business is going.
Right. And is the recruitment angle, because one of your big business models is, selling data to recruiters and tools for them to recruit. Is
not really selling data.
Not selling data, I'm sorry, that sounds evil.
Yes,
well, what is it? Maybe you could explain exactly.
It's a search interface. It's a SaaS search interface where they can search and discover people and communicate with them and collaborate with each other as they're communicating with a prospective candidate, these sorts of things.
Right. Do you think that that's as useful in other industries? Is tech really the most powerful industry when it comes to recruiting?
Well, we're actually having growth in all the industries,
and
I think it'll be for any industry that has essentially any kind of skills behind it, skilled professionals, etc. I think that those set of tools will work. I also think it doesn't just work for recruiting. Part of how we look at this is we also help people market. We also help people sell, right? It's when are you reaching out to professionals in order to do some kind of business transaction? The business transaction might be, here's an opportunity with the company. It might be, here's a brand or a product you need to understand, or here's a product or a service that you might want to buy. All of these things I think are potentially useful.
And I want to move back a bit because you invested very early in Facebook, as you talked about on stage. You've made a lot of great investments. You're kind of known for that. What is it in people, in young entrepreneurs that you really look for, that you see? And actually, I really just want to ask, who do you think right now, who's a recent entrepreneur that you met that you feel really has it, that many of us maybe don't know about yet?
So I can't talk about things on camera of things that I'm possibly investing in for kind of obvious reasons.
Okay.
Kind of other people that would excite other people's interest in investing them. But a particular awesome guy that I met recently was Andreas N., who was the CTO of Spotify and is now the CTO and co-founder of Rap.
Okay.
And he's not that well known in the Valley because, Stockholm, although he comes over here about half his time now, and he is one of the world-class CTOs. And he's a young guy and all the rest of it. It's awesome. And so that's one of the pleasures that you have in this business, right? Of meeting new people where you're like, you're a world changer.
Right. And last question I want to ask, you're kind of seen as an elder statesman almost in the tech industry. Not really old, but you've had some really great successes. People know your name, they trust you. You've already started to get into writing books and all these things. But you're really young. I mean,
yes, that was my little gesture.
Real world, you're 45 years old. 45?
Yep.
How do you think about going from here? Do you have sort of a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan? Like, where would you like to be in 10 years? You mentioned that you never thought that you'd be flying on private jets and things already, and here you are already 45 years old.
There are people younger than me flying on private jets, but whatever it's worth. I guess, for me, the next 5 to 10 years is a combination of how do you build out kind of this Venture 2.0 platform in terms of what we're doing at Greylock, which is everything from the Discovery Fund. Also, we have a talent team that focuses on product engineers and designers who are below director level for very early stage companies. It's not like your standard executive recruiter. We have that too, because helping the companies is really important. And actually, Jeff Markowitz is not standard. He's awesome. But we have that function, and also, so building out that as a platform, I think also working with really great entrepreneurs in terms of building new kinds of companies. Airbnb is one that everyone's heard of now with Brian Chesky, but Edmodo and Rap are two ones I just mentioned. They're both in the social space. Edmodo is social network for K-12 education, and Rap is social gift cards. And then also, kind of how do you change the world? So how do you apply this to philanthropy? So one of the things we're doing at LinkedIn is we've got this LinkedIn for Good initiative, which is how do we bake in, not as kind of just making employees happy, or not as just kind of a little like, we do X for nonprofit Y in order to make, have like a yay us, we're doing good.
Right. But
how do you make it systemic? How do you make it transformational the same way your core business is transformational? So for example, our initial focus is on how LinkedIn can help nonprofits find expert board members, right? And so that kind of thing as a function, because it aligns with the core of what LinkedIn does, but could have a really positive impact across all nonprofits, as an instance.
It seems like you really think about things now in terms of platforms and other people. None of the things that you just mentioned were things that you specifically individually do. You really think of your life in terms of like a network.
Well, more or less now, one of the things that happens when you have resources is the way that you achieve stronger scale is you always act through networks and organizations, right? So very rarely, so the way I work sometimes with a company is I'm a board member, so that's my individual work, but it's the whole company that goes and changes the world. It's the founders, it's the CEO, and you help them do that. I think that's one of the ways that you think about, like, what are the different patterns by which you change the world, or how do you enable networks? How do you use the network to amplify a particular founder's or entrepreneur's success? Those kinds of things are how you get the high watermark results.
Reid Hoffman, thank you so much for coming backstage and joining us at Disrupt. It's always great to see you. So.
Thank you.